Hi everyone, and thank you for being here. After two fantastic talks by Alex and Sarah, we are now diving right into the panel discussion. Today we are digging into how AI is changing product management, not just the tech we build, but how we work, how the risks we face, and skills that we need going forward. So today our panel members, we have an incredible panel here today, each and every one of them working very hands-on with AI in a wide variety of contexts. So let's meet them. Maybe a quick intro from each of you, maybe 2 sentences.
Hi everyone, so my name is Rory O'Flynn and I'm a product manager with FirstBlox. So we build cloud foundational products using AWS, and what we're really trying to do with our products is enable tech builders to focus on building, so we remove the setup for them on AWS.
Awesome. Robert O'Shaughnessy, a very widespread career from software development, product management, design. Had my own startup, which was acquired. Went on to work for product management for lots of big companies you'd know. And then ChatGPT came around, quit everything and decided AI was the way forward. Started a YouTube channel and now teach tons of people about how to use AI to build stuff.
Thanks. Sarah, you just heard me speak from Salesforce.
I'm Sarah Amanda Halpin. I'm a product manager at Genesys, and my product is Agent Copilot. It's different from the Microsoft Agent Copilot. At Genesys, we power AI orchestrations through software. So anytime you ring your bank, maybe CVS even, that is powered by Genesys. So connecting customers with businesses. And my product in particular is enabling agents, so sales reps, service reps, to do their job better by using AI to surface the right knowledge at the right time, summaries, big one as well, next best action, all that great stuff.
Yeah, this is going to be a bit of a thing between us now, passing the mics around. So yeah, let's perhaps start with the big picture. How is AI changing the way we build software products? Like not just AI features and stuff, but the dynamics between PMs, how product managers navigate team dynamics. So maybe Rory, we'll start with you.
Sure. So in FirstBlox, we're quite a small company, so we've really seen the benefit of using AI. It's kind of like another hand in the company in a way. But we don't have a AI product on the market currently, but we use AI in our internal workflows. So we use things like, I use things like ChatGPT for user story creation, sprint planning. I also use it for deep research, for like competitor research. And kind of, like a mix of Claude and Perplexity as well. But I also have been using Cursor AI, which I've found really, really beneficial. So we've ditched Figma in the past while, and we're exclusively using Cursor AI to build prototypes. So I can see the design straight away, and you can basically spin up a clickable prototype in hours. So it's amazing.
Yeah, I'd echo a lot of that. It's changed workflows completely. So everything from like creating a user persona for each one of the people you'd interact with in a project. So you've got your product manager, software architect, and UX designer. So I have this prompt flow where I'll initiate a prompt about an idea or a pitch that I have, feed it to the product manager. It does a deep analysis and runs through competitive analysis and placement in the market. Takes that, feeds it to a UX designer, and the UX designer will take a prompt that will have like 4 or 5 different potential UI applications on how that might work out. I get to go through it and pick out which fits the user personas best, and then feeding all that with a few questions to a software architect, and then the architect basically decides on what infrastructure I should be using, my folder structure, everything based on what it knows about me, my code base, to build the whole thing out. And then, like you said, feed that into Cursor. Figma is gone. I love Figma. I spent like years like learning it back to front. I'm dying to get back into it, but I don't go near it because I could just prompt a whole UI into existence. And I think I was saying to you early on, it's not the most beautiful UI, but it's better than what 90% of people can come up with at a first pass. And that's all what most people need. And then cursor. I mean, I can develop code, but I'm a busy person, small kids, and I just don't have time. And there's projects that I've been able to build, and I do one a week and I put them up on the channel, that I've been dreaming about for years that I couldn't make. And as a product manager, as a product person and designer, this is amazing for me. I can now just like with Cursor or Windsurf or whatever, like generate these projects really, really quickly and play with them. It's very satisfying. So I think that's why I asked the question about small teams. I just think we're in this space where like a couple of people together can do really big things. So that's the change I see.
Yeah, just to echo what the two said there is, I use it as my coworker at this point, and especially with user interviews, like just to kind of, obviously there's no true substitute for user interview, but just to prepare myself and refine my own scripts. It can often throw up some interesting things or blind spots that I might have missed. Yeah.
I'd be very similar with Sarah. It's like my assistant that just corrects my English, makes me kind of a better speaker, written wise, but also like ideation and new ideas, like what's out there in the market, what's coming, all of that like used to take hours and hours of trawling through the internet, and now you can have it at your fingertips, whether it's Gemini or GPT or whatever you're using. So it really does accelerate what you can do a lot quicker as well.
Amanda, I just let you, everyone can hear me, and I let you hold on to the mic for a moment there, because as someone working directly on AI products, I imagine the challenge is not just technical. It's also about trust, as Alex touched upon. As businesses rush to adopt AI, what are the key privacy or ethical concerns you think product teams need to prioritize?
Yeah, so I'm delighted that Alex mentioned the regulations. Like in Europe anyway, we are very much so looking at the EU AI Act and what that has brought. So it has brought a lot of structure, which is great. We did need it. It was a bit of the Wild West. And what we're seeing is our customers are asking like fundamental questions like, how are you training your models? How are you fine-tuning them? What data are you using? Are you using my data? Is it anonymized? So you need to be fully equipped with all these answers before you go to market, and build that into your product as well. So at Genesys, that's what we do. We use data to fine-tune models, whether it's foundational models or open source models. We have an opt-in process. So if customers want, like if our customers want to provide data, they can. They'll be anonymized. Other than that, we'll use domain-specific data. So as I said, we're in contact center space, so it's all around customer service. We're not trolling the internet for data. It'd be irrelevant. So making sure that it's contextually relevant, making sure it's not biased, and so really making sure that you have your data sets appropriate, and full disclosure as much as you can to your customers. Transparency is huge. So if there's decisions being made, obviously with the EU AI Act, it's a bit hard to say. It categorizes the risk into high, I think it's high, limited, and low. And typically, like most companies, like if it's B2B or even B2C, you'll fall into like limited. High is basically you're not allowed, it's prohibited. So if you're using AI to say screen out candidates like for recruitment purposes, or if the AI is going to make a decision that means someone's going to get hired or get paid more, for example. So these are like big decisions. Unfortunately, poor Google has gotten rid of their "don't be evil" out of their mission statement, but I think we need to bring it back. I think that's what we need to do, not be evil. Like, AI is very powerful. We need to make sure that, and this is what our customers are holding us accountable to. When you are designing something, that it doesn't have bad consequences for the customer, the end user. Like, okay, it might grow the corporation's share price or whatever, but you know, at the end of the day, we're all humans, so let's not be evil.
Sarah, would you like to add something to that? Working on Gen AI internally?
Internally to.
Well, because you have been working
Yes.
on it. So
Yeah.
have these conversations come up in terms of like...
Just to build a bit on what Amanda said, like I do think that trust piece, it's interesting. I think as Alex mentioned as well, like it's an unsolved problem right now. One thing I can say is that, you know, you do have to provide people with the tools in order to make the decisions that are relevant to them. So that means, you know, as Alex mentioned, explainability, and I'm a huge believer of human in the loop. I really get nervous when things are happening with LLMs and there's no human in the loop. We launched a feature internally that was basically anyone can set up a Slack channel and have curated data, and like we have lots of initiatives that get like the same questions over and over again, and as anyone who works in a large company knows, no one reads documentation or FAQs, no matter how much like is created, they'll still come onto the channel and ask the most obvious question. So we created a little thing with LLM, with an agent that did that. And one thing that people really loved, that we kind of discovered by accident, is that people running those channels are like, I like it because I can kind of mind and keep an eye on what the agent is saying back to people, and then sometimes it gets it wrong and they come in and correct it. So I like love that, like, you know, ability to like make it like super transparent about what it's doing and not hide anything away.
Perfect. Those were some really good insights. I would actually add to that, I tried using AI Atlassian Intelligence to write my acceptance criteria, and I had to proofread it because it did make some mistakes there, so. Yeah. Well, given everything we've discussed, from the way AI is, you know, changing how we build stuff and the risks and stuff, I'd like to kind of go round robin across the panel members, and maybe you can give 2 sentences on what skills PMs should be focusing on. I know Alex, you gave like more of a bigger, you know, horizon sort of predictions, but I'd like to hear from each one of you as well. Like, what should we be doubling down on? What do you think PMs should work on?
I think it's just to kind of reiterate what Alex was saying before. It's just kind of, you know, be kind of a jack of all trades in a way, and be curious about maybe other disciplines as well, and, you know, ask around, you know, I mean, talk to an engineer, be curious about the areas where you're not so good at, or maybe you've a lack of knowledge in. So.
I think they're both overhyped and underhyped at the same time, but AI agents as a skill to double down on, because I think that for product managers kind of changes the complete model of what we've known to exist before, in terms of pricing, in terms of strategy, in terms of our moat around what we build towards the market. And I think that will change very rapidly on 1, 2, 3 horizons. And doubling down on that, using it, trying to create agents, even in no-code platforms, to understand how they work and what's coming. I think that's important, because if you don't keep an eye on that paradigm shift, everything else we're learning kind of falls apart.
I think I'm going to just take a different angle and say I would double down a little bit more on the things that make us human that AI is not likely to take over, and that makes like empathy, curiosity, kindness, and things of that nature, because, you know, as the AI is going to like take over more and more things, it's and a general sense of like asking really good and pointed questions. There's an institute out there called Good Question Institute that like runs training in schools in the US to teach people how to ask good questions. And they have great resources online if anyone wants to figure out like, how do you start asking really good questions, because questions are powerful and they're non-threatening, and you can make a case for a lot of things through a question that you can't say as a statement. So things like that, soft skills of that nature, I think.
And I would say it's kind of going back to a few points that you had in your presentation, Sarah. Just getting comfortable with not everything working 100% right. and having that, knowing that, you know, if you are building, because, you know, at the end of the day, we're product managers, some of us might be building product management products with AI. In time, I'm sure everything's going to have a sprinkle of AI in it, and so, you know, everyone will have to get comfortable with not everything working 100% of the time, and always having to go back and to check in case there's been drift, and get comfortable experimenting. You know, it's okay if, you know, you mock up a POC and you show it to a few people and they say, oh, it's you know, it's hallucinating slightly. Like, that's good. You know, it's good to experiment, good to get the feedback, and just being comfortable with not everything being okay.
Well, we're actually running quicker than planned. I had shortened the panel discussion quite a bit to help us, but I think we'll just give more room for everyone else to ask questions and track the panel members. So I'll close with a rapid fire round. AI is moving fast, but I want to hear from each one of you. What's one tool you're loving right now, and what's one you wish existed?
Yeah, so I started using Lovable there recently. It's a little bit like Cursor, but the idea behind it is that you can kind of spin up sites really, really quickly. So that's what I'm loving right now. And something that I'd like to see, and I thought about this morning, within ChatGPT and other kind of providers like that, what if they had some sort of carbon footprint meter there, just to show, I suppose, what's happening behind the scenes. And actually, someone who did it, they created an extension through Chrome, so it can actually track if you're environmentally conscious. But yeah.
I think there's one tool I use, Whisperflow. It's like voice dictation, but you can use Mac dictation or Windows dictation. And I totally agree with you. Voice is kind of huge. I use it for most things now. In how I interface with the computer. I taught my wife how to do it, and she works in an office just next to me, and it's the biggest regret I've ever had. All I hear is like talking about meeting notes and all these things running through, but I foresee how, like you said, voice will definitely become a big thing. What I'd like to see is a really good to-do list, in a sense that one of the biggest things I try to teach people is, for every task you get that comes to you, try to use AI first in some way. Try and just, talk to it about the task, or try and use it as your first pass, because that's how you discover how good it is and where it can be applied. So a to-do list that basically I do a brain dump, all my things on my mind are listed in that list, and then a breakdown from the LLM starts to show me exactly how I can use AI and what tools I can use and something like that. So yeah, I'd love to see that.
As when you say tools, task management, we did a lot of UX research and we were like, oh, we need a tool, internal tool to help people manage their tasks. I've not met one person or two people who manage their tasks in the same way. Not once. We interviewed so many people and everyone had a completely unique system to them, so maybe that's where AI could help there somewhere. But there's also a reason why, you notice there's no market leader in task management, not one. And that it's so very diverse. So my favorite tool right now is the ChatGPT voice to chat to back and forth. I love that experience. I think it's really, really cool. And then one tool I wish existed is something that would allow me to create good slides, because it doesn't exist right now. Dear, give me a tip, Gamma.app, I'm going to try it when I get home. But I hate creating slide presentations.
So mine is more personal, I suppose. Gmail has rolled out Gemini on, I don't know, I think I'm opted in, not everyone has it, but it's unreal. Like, I've had a big email thread, I just summarised it, it's like TLDR, thank you. So yeah, that was like, it's a lifesaver. And what I would love to see, again, non-work related, but Google have I/O this week and a lot of cool stuff has come out. One of the pieces around shopping, it's all around online shopping, and long story short, you'll prompt what you want and then it'll collect all like different recommendations, and you know, you can do price tracking, and they'll do this like virtual try on basically. I want that in a shop. I want to walk into a shop, like when I'm shopping in a shop down in town during the weekend. I want to walk in. I don't want to look around. I just want to look at a mirror. I want the mirror to analyse my size, my skin tone, my hair, and just say, okay, based on you, this is what we have in store. Would you like to buy it? And it's like a personal shopper. So yeah, that's really what I want.
Thanks everyone. So now before we wrap up, we'd love to hear from the audience if anyone has any questions for the panel members or even our first speaker, Alex. I'm sorry, I didn't give a chance for questions before this, so.
Always really hard to ask the first question.
I'll go first. You know, I love this idea of using the AI tools to do the POCs and come up with, you know, the user interface. And I think Alex talked as well about the importance of UX. We talked about the interaction between product managers and UX. And then you guys, Rory and Rob, you both mentioned kind of Figma's dead in some shape or other, and you know, we're using the tools. But you also said it doesn't produce the most beautiful UI. So my question is, like, how do we evolve that interaction with the user experience design? And how do you leverage the tools to still come out with a beautiful UI at the end of the day? Sometimes a POC is fine, but you still need to deliver beautiful products, and, you know, in certain markets at least. So how do we best leverage the tools for that? And what's the process? And how does AI inform that?
I think there's good. It's a really good question, and I think there's good and bad to it. The bad is that it is the good part. Is that there, like you said, there's no good slide generator. There's no good UI generator. So Claude 3.7 does a great job at putting together like a generic interface. It's not going to win any awards. But I've tried every single tool that generates a UI, and it just doesn't land. And I think somebody else mentioned it. I think you mentioned UX was still very a human thing and very important. So there's a great role for us there as humans in understanding and getting that part really right. So when I say, I wouldn't say Figma is dead. I'd say for a lot of software and a lot of POCs and a lot of getting stuff off the ground, Claude and tools to generate is great. But then you do get to a point where your differentiator as a product is going to be your UX and your experience. And that can be a moat in itself. And so that's when Figma comes into play. You take the basis of what you've built and you've tested and has a market and go, okay, let's make this awesome. And you iterate from there. That's my take on it anyway.
And just to follow up with, I love the answer, but is there an opportunity to sort of, you talked to various speakers as well about sort of the interactiveness with AI, right, whether it's voice or whatever it is, but, you know, what I love, I'm not sure the tool exists, but is more that interactive discussion. So you generate a proof of concept, you look at it and go, yeah, that's nice, but it's not the most beautiful. What if you just tweak this, or change that layout, or you know, make this more usable because this is the feature that's most used, in my opinion, as a product manager. What's the opportunity to sort of have an interactive dialogue with some of these tools to very quickly evolve? You know, this kind of dialogue you'd have with UX designer, right?
That's absolutely there. Like, I mean, like, not to plug my own channel, but if you watch any of my videos, I'll have an interface there. But like, there's an interface there, and I start with that interface, and I go, okay, that's grand. Like, that call to action isn't clear enough. Remove the image, and I say that with my voice. I'm not typing. I'm not doing any code, and it runs through an iteration and changes. And I'm like, okay, I'm happy with that. Now let's drop the contrast and let's change that. That's that iteration that you're talking about. Now it's done in code, and it's a little bit janky, if you will, but it's getting there. Yeah.
And why can't that process? Sorry, I don't need to have the floor. But why can't that process deliver a beautiful product?
That's a great question, but I guess, so you think about it, and sorry, I won't dominate the conversation if anyone wants to take it, but like, so an LLM works on the fact that it basically is crawling what's out there in existence, and it generalizes down to...
Same old.
Yeah, it generalizes down to average. So it's basically going to give you like something that's way better than anyone in this room that's not a designer, but it is just average. And it's not... Great interfaces come from novel thinking and from thinking that's very specific to, like as you said, reading through trawls of feedback to decide that, oh, we've put the button over here on the left-hand side. Most people have smaller thumbs or reaches. We need to have it over here on the right, and that makes a big change. And that's not something a large language model is going to intuitively come up with unless it's crawled at. So I think that's where the difference is.
Just to add to that, like when I said like AI can only do what you show it was good is, and it can't do anymore. So if you can't show this is what good is, and then it'll just copy that, you know, it can only do what it's given.
I think one of the paradigms I talk about when I talk about my design teams is design has two purposes. There's a functional element and there's an emotional element. AI can do the functional element, but the emotional element is a very human thing. And the differentiator between really good design and okay design is does it evoke emotion. And that's something that I think we're going to have a really hard time getting robots to replicate. For a while, they'll get there, but for a while it's going to be hard to replicate that.
But yeah, exactly. Like robots don't have theory of mind. They can't put themselves into the shoes going, how would I feel in this situation? Yeah.
Hey, thanks very much. Thanks for the talks. I have a question kind of evolving onto the design, you know, like, I think you mentioned it, you know, AI agents have, you know, revolutionized, I think, you know, they've created, you know, as well going into like product management, you know, the converging of jobs into one, you know, you have your UX designer, your data analyst, your marketeer. So AI agents are using that now to say, I have an idea, send it off, use a workflow like end-to-end to go hit off that, come back and you have a brief. For you, what do you think is missing out of these AI tools now? What's something that you're like, oh, you know, there's something's there, you know, to evolve into so that it saves either time or scale as well?
I'm not sure I understand the question, sorry.
So what tool do you think is missing right now from AI, like, from using AI? So what would help your job move better? Because like, right now I use quite anything. I don't know if anyone uses it to create AI agents. So you use it for management and consume ideas and I'll send it off. And that would like divide into multiple different agents who do research and then that would come back with a document I'll go through and then I'll say, I want to create a UX for that and then create a tech. And I think Rob, you mentioned that. But I was just wondering from your perspective, what are you missing anything yourselves? Or what do you wish that was there?
I can definitely speak a little bit to that. So for me, like there is no tool out there right now that does good content assessment and management for use in AI. Nothing exists. If it did, it's a multi-million-dollar company if anyone wants to start it. But and it's, you know, it's possible right now to do that. And obviously with human in the loop, because you know you need to have like humans ultimately deciding taxonomy and things like that. But yeah, that's a big one for us. Something that will allow you to get through vast amount of enterprise data and clean it up.
I think just also like back to your one of the points that you made, like at the moment you have to kind of launch small and then iterate because you're getting that user feedback just from a product perspective. Like the reason why it's, you know, we may not have all the bells and whistles is because we're like launching and then iterating, launching, iterating. So products will get there. But yeah, it's just going to take a little bit of time, I think.
I don't think the mic yet. So, just shifting the conversation a bit, I was curious about team dynamics. We have the, like, let's call the old school development teams with product manager, maybe there's a scrum master, you have developers and a senior developer. But that team dynamic will probably shift over time as we start using AI more and more for our product development. So I would be interested in your thoughts on how you see that team dynamic start to shift, or if it shifts at all in the interactions within the team.
My teams are all agents, so I can't.
So, you know, AI will change really, really fast, technology will change really fast, humans don't change that fast. And there's a thing called Dunbar's number. Has anyone heard of Dunbar's number? So it's basically, you can be kind of acquaintances with about 50 people, that's kind of the limit, and it's the size of a human tribe, if you find people in hunter-gatherer situations. And you know, you can bring it down into like basically 5 to 7 people is the amount of people that you can like share working memory with. So I think that's always going to be the size of a team, because that's human nature to be around that size of a team. So it's 5 to 7 people you can, you know, share working memory with and kind of almost share a brain. They've shown through like various studies in neurology that like people, when they work really close together, they almost start to like it's not telepathic, but it's like you get to know, you know when you've worked with a team for a really long time. And I'm also a big believer, this book called Team Topologies, by the way, which I think is just criminally underrated. It's from the same publishers that did like the Dora metrics and Accelerate. And they talk about like how you really only get like proper, you know, functionality and sharing of that cognitive load and that ability on a team after about 18 months. And we all live in, you know, in the world where like, gosh, you're lucky if you're, you know, survived reorg for 6 months. I've been really lucky. I've been in the same team for 3 years, and everyone's like, oh, why did you guys move so fast? And what? And I also go, why is there nothing in your tickets? You know, like, because I put like 3 words in it, because we've talked so much that day that we all get it from that ticket. So I don't spend my whole day writing out big long tickets. I just, you know, we have a chat and we talk, and we know each other so much that we can kind of fill in for each other. So I do think that's not going to change.
I just to add to that, I also think like the data science team will obviously come into the fold. Like I work with data science teams, but what we'll also find is like your standard developer, because you know with Q and everything, like in prompting is becoming a lot more accessible to those who didn't study data science. So we're going to have like obviously data scientists are like such a finite resource, like it's very hard to get them, but like with the evolution of prompt engineering and how it has, you know, become a lot more accessible, that, you know, there'll be opportunities to have developers in those, having those skills. They may not necessarily have an MBA or, you know, an MSc in it, but, you know, they'll be able to kind of contribute to that. Different to what we would have seen like 6-7 years ago, where it was just the data science team that was working on AI.
Okay, we have another question here.
Sorry, in terms of product development, I was curious to know, how do you incorporate AI-driven features into your product without overwhelming the users?
I think you start by solving their problems. So rather than going, we need an AI feature, we're going to shove it, you start with the pain of the user and you solve their problem. And if that uses AI, great, and if it doesn't, then don't.
And my next question, just now, in terms of user experience, now that you said you solve their problem fast, have you seen a shift in users' expectation in regards to personalization, speed, and automation?
User expectations have never been higher. And that actually started before AI. Like, I work on internal tools, and you think, like, you know, it's only the employees, who cares? No, they will complain, and like, they're very demanding. And the expectations are so high now, and I think, you know, no longer can we get away with like half-baked things. They have to be well thought out.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'll give an example as well. So the summarization feature that I work on, so it's a conversation, it's phone call or, you know, digital interaction between the business and the customer, and the customer service rep has probably like between 30 and 45 seconds between hanging up the phone, taking their notes, that's what traditionally they did, and we call it wrapping up the conversation. So they take their notes, they say what it was about, if there's anything to do, actions, and that all needs to be done in like 45 seconds. And obviously with AI, we're able to get that summary to them within 5-6 seconds max. But now what they're asking for is a really personalised, customised summary. So I want to format it like this, I want this, that, and the other, because they're so used to using GPT, like create me this with that, with all these bells and whistles. But the trade-off is you can have all that detail. The trade-off is it's not going to take 5 seconds to generate. It's probably going to take the 45 seconds. So that's where we're, it's like, okay, we'll do this, but we know it's not going to hit the mark. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at the moment, trying to really level set what the expectation is and the reality of the latency, and what you need from a business perspective versus when you're using that at home. Like.
We have another question.
Just leading on from Alex's point earlier about the kind of age demographics and the trust in AI, have you seen that in, say, younger users that would be more inclined to trust or use AI agents as opposed to the older demographics, and the opportunities that presents? Like, just I guess your example about clothing, myself and another one literally had that conversation at the beginning, talking about that literally that situation where something can determine your size, etc. But also the fact that you might be more, for us anyway, be more inclined to do that with a bot than maybe another human, like stripping off about what would suit me, But you might do that, with an AI agent as opposed to another human.
It'd be interesting to hear what you guys are saying, but I don't know if you saw my chart. There's an interesting U-curve, right? So the people who are most distrustful of AI right now are actually the youngest generation and the oldest generation. People who trust AI the most are these middle-aged people like myself who are like, it's going to take all the world, it's great. But there's a healthy degree of skepticism that young people always have with, I think, new technologies, and definitely old people are not finding it. So you guys have seen something different, but that's the data I've seen. I don't serve many young customers, so it's hard for me to know.
I can only speak to demographics across like the analytics that I look at for channels and socials and stuff like that, but it's exactly who you're talking about. I think it's going to be the younger people who are really hoovering it up. But to be honest, my channel and my community makeup is me. It's like a 40-year-old male who is like really into this stuff, sees the power of it, and is milking it up. And the younger generation are just, as you said, like skeptical. So yeah, I don't know who's right. Maybe it's a healthy mix.
Hi. So this question might be to Sarah and Amanda. So just for some context, I work very closely with Genesys, but within healthcare, very sensitive contact center data. So there's a lot of accuracy testing that's needed because it's summarization, the wrap-up process essentially. So I actually just had that call with business stakeholders today, telling that, hey, got the accuracy testing, it's in its 80s, the output, so might not be clicking, so it's essentially user acceptance testing. So how would the two of you or anyone else actually come to that figure, saying like 95% accuracy it's the sweet spot? How do you convince users? Because for me, my users are contact center agents, so they are not necessarily the most technical people who would understand this, because the first time I did a demo, they went, oh, this is like magic. And it's somewhat tricky, and there's always skeptical folks, so it's been a struggle to get to that point where, hey, 95 is actually good, you can't expect 100. So what would your thought process be in sort of getting that figure and communicating it to the business?
I think it's just education. We had an escalation where it was 98% accurate. We're like, you're complaining about 2%, come on, like. So yeah, I think it's education, and it's it's going and it's educating those, not only the end users, but also the stakeholders, that you're not going to get it right all the time. You know, go back to your personal experiences. Like, we've all had the Zoom AI companion or whatever you use. I think you were saying it, like, you know, sometimes the meeting didn't go that way, and what are you talking about? Like, so, yeah, it's education, it's really hard. And I think we need to do a better job as Genesys and other vendors in putting out maybe statements, I'm not sure, but I don't know, what do you think, Sarah?
So yeah, like our approach to that was always, if we're not in the critical path, like if they produce, you know, the summary in 5 seconds, as long as that person's target is not like 10 seconds now because you're doing the summary, you still give them the additional 45 seconds to do their wrap up, then, you know, you're only enhancing, right? So it's like, you can ignore that and take your own notes if you wish, but it's here to go, oh yeah, I did forget they did say that. So as much as I love something to attend a meeting for me, so I didn't have to go to like 13 meetings a day, I still have to be in those meetings. But the summaries are great to go back and jog my memory for when, like, oh, what happened or what did I promise to this person. They're not fully like the same as going to a meeting yet. So yeah, as long as you stay a little away from the critical path, I think people are a lot more accepting of like 80 to 90% accuracy.
And I just add one more thing. So our ethos is human in the loop as well. So that's what we always try and say. It's an assistant. It's a co-pilot. It's not your AI agent. So, you know, there has to be a little bit of room for personalization, or, you know, just to, it's not going to be 100% right.
Something I also see a complete lack of in the market, and I see a huge opportunity for it, is the ability and tools for lay people to manage AI.
Yeah.
You know, right now we are completely relying on development teams to know when something's doing well and not, and to fix it. And we are not giving any tools to the business people who need to actually stand over the results. Yeah.
Like, what would that look like? Like a dashboard at
Yeah,
like a
even if something's
person's level?
but an ability to tweak as well. Like, even as that feedback just goes straight back to the development team, like just that ability for, like, you know, a manager, like if we're treating these like, you know, almost junior members of our team, they need to be managed. And they need to be managed by someone who has domain expertise, not a developer team.
Yeah, do a one-to-one with your AD, performance review or something like that.
So I can tell how that happens with mine as well, because it's like a compliance thing, because it's all health tested, so it's going back to, so it's sort of, you know, going back to regulators, and they're doing like audits and stuff. So I know that we have like two sort of ways of doing it. If the agent, the customer service agent, they see the summary and they go like, yep, no, this makes no sense, they can always sort of, they have like a text box right next to it, so they can sort of expand that out and they can write it, and that feedback gets looped back to my development team. So it's sort of, you know, usually my task every few days to go and look at that to see if there's anything funny. So I've usually found that it comes back to the human in the loop process, because you always need someone there, and I can see the program directors running around telling like, oh, you know, once this is done, we can disband your team, you can work on something else, and I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. So yeah, just wanted to address
question back to you, because that's really interesting. Like, have the regulators said anything about how, you know, introducing these things? Because like, so working in the industry a long time before AI, I'm just super interested to hear what their reception is.
So I deal with American healthcare, so it's a little bit different. So we haven't had like a regulator audit yet. We have done our internal audits, and you know, to a much higher sort of standard, so to say, because, you know, the regulators are state dependent. So we did find places where either certain things were missed out, maybe for example like a phone number that was mentioned that should have been captured was missed out, or like the transcript quality itself wasn't the best, so, you know, it just couldn't hold up to it. So which is why we sort of doubled down on the feedback loop a little bit more, because we came to the conclusion that like I think someone did mention, like it's an assistant, it's there to sort of like value add your workflow, and it's not going to replace it entirely. So there was a little bit of friction in going back and sort of like, you know, level setting with senior stakeholders. Hey, this is not that sort of, you know, magic box where, you know, you throw something into it, it's just gonna throw something.
Like that.
I know, right? So, but it took a little while, like you said, you know, that education piece. It took a little while, but people are sort of, you know, I'm hoping that they are a little bit more grounded now, and because we see a lot more adoption, and there are actually people coming and knocking on my toes. So, but yeah, that's at least that's the way that we've handled it right now. But yeah.
Awesome, I love this back and forth discussion. Who's got the next question?
So it's regarding mostly productivity tools and product management. So do you think it is a good idea to involve AI agent directly with the user when it comes to user interviews? And there has been a resistance because they don't ask follow-up questions and lack of empathy. And what I recently came across was something called Sesame AI, which is very much human. I mean, it talks like human, it almost feels real. So there's a conversation happening and it asks follow-up questions. And also it asks me if I'm okay when I sometimes breathe heavy. So that's
amazing.
how
Everyone go to sesame.ai and try that out. It is mind-blowing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I've talked loud.
So you mean Sesame in perspective to using it in user interviews or for actually customer empathy and stuff like that?
Actually interacting with users when it comes to user interviews.
Yeah.
So it can be used as a productivity tool,
Yeah.
so it can use our time wisely somewhere else.
Yeah. I guess the key differentiation is it's faking empathy, or it's not got deep reasoning going on behind that. It's making some novel cues on voice intonation that may or may not get wrong. So I've seen it do some really good novel conversation pieces, and I've had those myself. But again, you raised really great points there, and so do you guys, about when these novel things come out on Twitter or on YouTube, it's proclaimed that X career is now dead. But if you actually drill down and you spend more than 10 minutes with the product, or you start to realize that edge cases are important, or doctors can't get it wrong, you start to realize, no, those careers aren't going away. So I think it really has a use case and a use place, but we have to remember that it's faking this stuff, and that when we know that we can apply it in a certain way, maybe it's good for acting, maybe it's good for synthesization, for video, and stuff like that, but maybe not a customer interview.
Any more questions?
Check. Thank you for the panel discussion. It was lovely. My question could be a bit towards product management or marketing here. I was just wondering, since in this age we have so many AI products, how do a product management look into how they would like to shape their AI product to stand out from the competition? Could be a product marketing question, I can totally avoid that. But still, in a way.
I think about this all the time because, as I said, like models, they're going to come and go, they're going to get new ones, everyone's going to have access to basically the same technology, so how do you stand out? You stand out in the same way you always did, by understanding your users and solving the problems and caring about what they care about. Again, I think that empathy piece, which AI can't do yet, is just never going to go out of fashion. And yeah, just, it's almost painfully simple, but like, it takes so much work and care and trust. Like, I come back to Slack again, like Slack does so many nice things. Like, I'm not on the main product team for Slack, but there's so many nice things. Like, if you're on a Slack huddle and you hang up, and the other person, the other person hangs up and you don't hang up and I forget to leave the call. It comes in and just plays like relaxing music, like this little music stuff that you hear, like, and it's just lovely. There's no metric behind that. There's no, there's no like thing that we're like, if we do this, we'll increase this metric by X%. It's just for the love. It's like the Slack has a principle of customer love, which I think is such a fantastic idea, and it's that idea of caring about your customers. And I think that never goes out of fashion, and AI is just another tool to do that.
And I'd add quality versus quantity. Like, there's no point in churning out a load of new AI features if, like, the core use cases aren't great quality. And that's what we're actually seeing in the Agent Copilot for contact center space, where no one's really releasing any new features. They're just making what they released better, because we all have to be quick to market. You know, we have to get first mover advantage. If you want to have an absolutely perfect agent Copilot, you know, you'd still be waiting for it, and you would have lost a lot of market share. So yeah, quality, listening to your users, and yeah, going back to what the actual value is. Like, I've only been in product management for a year. I was in sales for many, many years. So I always have that hat on, like, what is the actual value that I'm bringing to my customers?
ROI.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can really add much to that, but from a different perspective, it's maybe not try to be incremental in your product in terms of being reactive to the rest of your market, to try and really be bold and make some kind of bold moves. Yeah, weird choices, absolutely, because you'll even see now, I just came back from San Francisco and I was chatting to a few different characters who had deep ties in OpenAI and Anthropic, and the feedback was that those teams are exhausted, because what they're doing is they've been on this high sprint for the last 2 or 3 years, where OpenAI releases something, Anthropic comes back with a volley. Even in the last week, the cycle time on feature releases has been so tight that we've seen all the same products from every big FANG company released at the same time. And so, and they're exhausted because they're being reactive to just, we don't know what the next big thing is, so we better just be in front of everything. So I think it's really hard, but you need to make the weird choices, try and do something bold, something different, and try and think even a year ahead. Because if you're trying to play in the space that's now, you're too late. It needs to be a year ahead.
Great stuff. So probably about time to start wrapping things up. But any last questions? Probably have time for one more. We exhausted all the questions.
We've one last
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
No, it's just on, it all goes back to that thing of like, what problem are we trying to solve? But yeah, I mean, just plugging in AI for AI's sake, myself and Sarah had a conversation there about like the likes of WhatsApp, just plugging in AI into the app, just without any kind of consideration, is a very bold move on their behalf. But it can be very detrimental to the brand as well. So you have to be very careful in that regard too. So,
yeah, great advice there. So, any last questions before we wrap up? One more, good stuff.
Just when you talk about AI for AI's sake, I read an article in the New York Times talking about how saying please and thank you is costing OpenAI billions. So, just I guess from the environmental impact and the footprint perspective, I know we kind of briefly touched on it, but if we're using ChatGPT for things that maybe we're a little bit lazy about, we don't really need to, like all that processing power has to come from somewhere, and I guess maybe it's only on companies themselves. And I know Genesys has a lot of ethics around environmental stuff, but I'm thinking like the carbon footprint that we're going to potentially create around this, and again legislation etc. hasn't caught up on this, and like what do you see the impacts or maybe potential lockdowns or restrictions there around how we curb this back a bit and we don't, I guess, waste.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have a huge impact on the national grid, I think. But I kind of in two minds about it in terms of the cost. So I think it's either going to become really, really cheap for people to access, or it's going to become this barrier to entry where you're going to have to give over a pile of money just to access AI. And in terms of the environmental, going back to the environmental piece, it's a huge consideration. I mean, in terms of the hardware and the manufacturing, I think that's going to have to get smarter too. So.
I was just saying, I think we're living through the ZERP era of AI, where everyone's like, don't worry, the money's coming. And I think that will have to be reckoned with sooner rather than later, because it costs a lot of money, like all these AI features. I don't think the free version of ChatGPT will exist in like 4 or 5 years. I don't think, they're completely funded by a lot of investment money, and that eventually those investors will come looking for what they're owed. And then the second part is, on an optimistic note in terms of the environmental impact, I would hope that like AI becomes a force and function and like investment in renewables and more sustainable energy sources. I saw Microsoft is investing in its own nuclear power plant through my island. So like maybe that becomes a force and function that like hopefully drives us a bit more towards sustainable energy.
Did you get in there?
Anyone who works with me know I get on the soapbox on this one a lot. But like the one good thing to know is over just the last 2 years, the energy resources required to run AI models has decreased by tenfold, right? So it's gotten a ton better. But it's still about 10 times more than a simple Google search. And what I tell my teams to do is just be really thoughtful about when you use it. So for example, if you want to go see the movies, you don't need to go into an LLM and ask them, hey, when is this movie playing, right? That's a Google search, it's simple. Like, think about what you're doing. It's just like in everyday life. Think about the decisions you're making that are the best for the environment and make the right decision that way. And I think it's like when all of us are just thinking about that. I met with one of my engineers today who was nervous about talking about green engineering. He was like, I should have been talking about this with you earlier. I'm like, absolutely, we should be talking about this. And he's going to start telling the story about the work that he's done to actually bring down the compute and the load that's he's through some of the work they're doing. I think those are the types of things we can encourage all of our teams to do, is tell those stories so that it becomes normalized and something that we celebrate.
Something like that. All right.